Hey, it's Jen, and I'm not at the beach today. I'm also filming in a little bit of a different way, so hopefully you guys appreciate this little bit of content. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, I did a few videos on finding the spot, and I wanted to expand on that a little bit more. So if you haven't seen those videos, I'll post them somewhere over, I think there's like some little cards or something over there, like a little icon that you can click. And also I don't have a lot of videos on this channel yet, so you can probably find them. So the ones that I'm talking about are the paddling hard myths. And I talked a lot about what is the importance of positioning ourselves in the wave, but I also talked about the spot. And what I wanted to talk a little bit about today is actually the psychology of why we don't sit in the right spot. So I feel like this is layered. This might be this might be a several part video. But I really wanted to hit on this point because I feel like the first part, obviously, that's really important is being able to recognize what the spot is. But I think sometimes intuitively, whether we're beginners, whether we're beginner intermediate, whether we're intermediate surfers, we often have an intuitive sense of where it is that maybe the majority of surfers are sitting in the lineup. And sometimes we can actually see the spot just because a lot of people are sitting at one spot in the lineup. And it's clear that everybody is there. And sometimes it can kind of feel like, maybe I shouldn't be over there because I'm a beginner. There can be a lot of different psychological elements that actually prevent us from positioning ourselves in the wave. And I wanted to talk and start to at least unpack some of those pieces because I think that they're really, really important. So if you haven't watched the videos about the spot, definitely watch those ones because it's really important that we start to identify again what that actually looks like. And then the other thing is we have to start to understand why is it that, we choose, because sometimes, a lot of the times, let's face it, we actually choose not to sit in the spot. And sometimes it's a subconscious choice, and sometimes it's just a totally obvious choice. I'll give you an example actually from a few days ago. It was on Monday. This week I surfed my new shortboard for the very first time. Super exciting, brand new surfboard. And I can tell you that because of the conditions and also because of where I had to sit in relationships to some rocks and where that particular spot was breaking, where the wave was breaking was kind of right in the rocks. And I knew that if I wanted to position myself for my particular board for those particular conditions, I would kind of have to surf through the rocks. And I had a brand new surfboard and I just didn't want to put myself in the spot. I literally realized, okay, that's the spot that's going to work for me with this board and these conditions. And I'm just not willing to take the risk of damaging my board in that particular spot. So, that's one reason, for example, that we might choose consciously not to sit in the spot. I wanted to talk a little bit about, though, the more subconscious psychology about why we don't sit in the spot. And there's a lot of layers. I don't even know where to start with this, to be quite honest. There's so many layers. Let's start with the very first piece. And it's confidence. The tricky part is when we're learning to surf, when we're that kind of in that space of the beginner phase and the intermediate phase, it's okay to actually, especially if you're just starting out, it's okay to feel like not a lot of confidence, because when you don't have a lot of control over your board, if you don't feel like you have your shit together in the water, it's actually better that you take the time to really gather some of those skills. So this is where actually the fundamentals of surfing, like just even board control, understanding how to do a proper turtle roll, understanding how to manage your board. And I'm not just talking about, okay, my board's really big, I don't know how to deal with that, so I'll just get a smaller board. That's actually not a really good solution. You need to be able to surf and manage a bigger board as well as a smaller board. They both come with their challenges, but they equally need to be managed. And honestly, I surf both shortboard and longboard. And I can tell you it's actually a heck of a lot easier to manage most of the time my longboard than it is my shortboard, just because with a bigger board, you can actually use the board to your advantage if you understand how to manage the board. So it's actually not about equipment size, it's actually about skills. So when we're a beginner, our confidence is kind of all over the map because we haven't quite developed the skills, right? So what I'm talking about is this space in between where maybe we're that perpetual beginner, right? So it's like we've been surfing for a while. There are probably some skills that we need to deepen in and work on. But there's also a place where we can tend to hold ourselves back by choosing not to sit in the place that we know we need to sit. And that can be a lot of different reasons. One is I'll refer to as sometimes there can be a really, it can be vibey. So there can be like this competitive sort of vibe in the water, right? Sometimes we can feel like I'm not good enough of a surfer to sit where all of the other really good surfers are. So this is where things get a little bit murky and gray, because there is a balance between obviously having the skills to be able to sit in that position in a way that we're actually not going to be putting ourselves in harm's way, and we're not going to be putting others in harm's way. This is where having good technique and learning fundamentals is so important, right? Because we can actually start to understand how to manage ourselves and our own safety, and also the safety of others. But we also need to be able to start to foster the confidence in our own capacity, because here's the thing. Sometimes, and I have been guilty of this, I have, pulled back from a wave or not gone because I was afraid of that I would fall, or how I would look, or how other people would perceive me. Because here's the thing, is in surfing, there definitely is a pecking order. There's this societal pecking order that happens, and it can be really intimidating, particularly if you are new to surfing, especially if you're new to a particular area. Maybe you're visiting a certain area, you're not local to that area, and every area has its own like kind of localisms and all of the sort of more like politics. We don't want to talk about surfing politics, but we kind of have to talk about that part as well, because it plays a role. There is a clear order of how we can actually take turns surfing, how we can actually be safe around each other. And all of that plays into why we choose to or don't choose to sit in the right spot. I realize this video is probably going to be really long, so I'm going to break this, I think, into a couple of parts. But what I wanted to do is, for those of you who watched the other videos, if you're curious about this, I want to invite you to actually comment on if you've had this experience where you haven't sat in the spot, you figured out where the spot was, where the main peak was, and you saw other people were sitting there. Maybe you felt intimidated, maybe you felt you didn't belong there, maybe you didn't feel like you didn't have the skills there. What were the things that held you back from actually putting yourself in the spot? I want to know in the comments. I'm going to talk a little bit about my own personal experience in part 2. And also I want to, of course, talk about what are some of the ways that helped me to overcome some of the psychological elements that allowed me to, and it's still something that's a work in progress. I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys. You know, I don't like always sit in the spot for a lot of different self-confidence reasons in my own surfing and capacity and all of the things. But what I want to know is, I want to invite you to share with me a little bit with your own personal experiences, with why you chose not to sit in the place that you knew you probably need to sit in, and any questions that you might have around that. So yeah, I'm gonna finish this video with part 1, part 2, and hopefully I can film part 2 at the beach, because I know this background, it's very officey, it's an office. But I love to come to you guys from the beach. So we're gonna hopefully do part 2 at the beach. And again, if you are a beginner, the big tip and takeaway here from this video in starting to really develop our sense of self-confidence, the very first thing is actually really just focusing on fundamental skills. Fundamental skills being surfboard management and control. That means that there's different practices and drills that you can actually do to help you manage your board safely. And as you start to feel more and more confident with being able to manage your board safely, being able to read waves more effectively, you'll be able to start to feel more confident in how you move around in the water and in the ocean, and how you can actually have control of even a really big longboard. I surf a 9.6 is my longboard. I really love big longboards for longboard style surfing, and my shortboard is a 6.1, so it's small. But they're very different, right? So I had to also learn, and I am still actually learning as I learn more shortboard skills, how to properly manage a shortboard. It's just different. It's not necessarily easier, I'm gonna tell you guys. For those of you, if you're a beginner, if you haven't surfed a smaller boards aren't necessarily easier to manage. They're just different and require a different skill set for us to learn. So that would be my big tip and takeaway from this part 1, is really developing our sense of confidence in board management and control and reading of the ocean. Anyway, I look forward to hearing your comments. Let me know. I always love hearing from you. So regardless, let me know what you think about this video below, and I will see you in part 2.